Hello and welcome back to Bookmas. Bookmas?
Bookmas!
Bookmas! This is day 2. That means it's Boxing Day today, I think.
Yep.
Wow, I don't know what day it is.
Merry Box Day!
Merry Box Day! We're going to get our boxes out. I don't know where the tradition comes from. And we have decided that today's video is going to be all about our favourite reads of this year. More specifically, our top 3 books for the year. We each have 3 big old books. Don't spoil. And we're going to go through one by one to explain why we like these books, what we read, and why we like them. Those are all the same thing. I'm going to start with my number 3, which is Bernard Cornwell Sharp's Assassin. It's not the best book I ever read, but it's also sharp, and that's why I love it.
Here's my top 3. It's not the best.
It's alright, yeah, no, it's good. I haven't read as much as I would like to have read in this year, or last year. I'm going to read a lot more in the coming year. But I love Sharp. Sharp is a fantastic book series and TV show, and the latest one came out, and it was great. You know, it's sharp. As a book, it's like 6 or 7 out of 10. As a sharp, it's like 8 or 9 out of 10. But for me, 10 out of 10.
I've had the same problem as you, in that I don't really feel like I've had a very good year.
So you've read like twice as many books as me.
I haven't enjoyed a lot of them. So these books were the top 3 of the year, but they're not like amazing books.
Yeah.
The Perks of Being a Wallflower is one of them.
Ah, the famous.
Yep, never read it. Feel like I'm a decade, 2 decades, very behind the times.
Yeah.
Yeah, wasn't expecting to really like it, but really enjoyed it. Read the first half twice. And then read the second half. Yeah, I don't really know why I enjoyed it. Didn't really enjoy the film very much, so there was obviously something going on in the book. Yeah, everyone knows what it's about.
Everyone knows, everyone's seen it.
Don't just do that, yeah.
My number 2, Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. I'm a big sci-fi nerd. I love sci-fi, especially logical, scientific sci-fi, which might sound like a bit of an unnecessary phrase, but...
Realistic, potentially realistic
sci-fi, and also humanity, heck yeah. A story of both first contact and saving the Earth from an apocalyptic event that is not some stupid doomsday scenario, but is actually just, oh no, things are science and bad things happen as a result of them. It's just a series of scientific solutions to scientific problems with some decent character building. You get to meet an alien, and the alien is amazing. And instead of this weird, like, antagonistic relationship, it's like, what if all of humanity's and an entire other species' lives were at stake, and the only people who could possibly help them are 2 nerds from a nerd from each species, and they're like, hey, a nerd, yeah, let's be nerds together. That's basically it. It's The Martian with a worse character, but with an alien first contact story.
And from what you told me, a lot more science.
And way more science. Just like an endless period of science. And not just like science like in Mars with like, you know, in The Martian with like how to grow potatoes and, oh no, I have to deal with like gas mechanics and like, you know, mechanical engineering, which is like relatively explainable. A lot of Project Hail Mary is orbital mechanics and orbital physics, and it's like explaining the way gas propulsion works, and it's just like, I don't know what you're talking about, but I'm learning, and I find it interesting. So it's cool. I really enjoyed it. Definitely some flaws. Wasn't a big fan of the ending, but I think really, really good, so definitely my top pick of the year. One of.
Will it be a movie in the next couple of years?
It'll be a movie in about 17 seconds.
When you're reading it, can you tell it should be a movie?
It's definitely a movie script. It's written to be a movie, and I just don't think a movie's going to do it very good justice, because it's going to have to be some weird sci-fi weird creature to be the alien. But like the alien speaks in musical intonations, like a whale, by passing air over its voice box, so it doesn't speak. It speaks, like that's...
You could do that well in a film.
You could do that so well. The audiobook for it, I haven't listened to the audiobook, but the audiobook does that. They brought in a sound engineer, so when he speaks, it's just notes, and then later on, when the main character learns the language and essentially just speaks English to him, and he replies back. And in the book, it's written as English, but in a kind of musical way. The notes are overlaid in the audiobook, so it's like he is speaking. It's like a mechanical beeping. That sounds so cool.
I want to see it in a film.
I'd be so good to see in a film, and you could just lift it straight from the audiobook. Good.
Good. A book from very early on in the year, when I still had high hopes for the year. If I Had Your Face.
Oh yeah.
Following 4 women in South Korea, each one, their lives all interlock. It's one of those ones where you start the story and you don't know how these 4 different characters connect, but then their lives kind of interlock, but each one focuses on a different aspect, I guess, of like South Korean society. One is very much focused on the plastic surgery industry and is spending a lot of money on that. Another one is more kind of dealing with like business world and the working world. Like it's yeah, I read it at the beginning of the year, so my memory of like the individual characters is a bit weak, but the takeaway from it is more of its learning about the culture, and I
Yeah.
don't think it's meant to be so much the characters. That was just kind of interesting.
Weird introduction to a culture.
It was a good introduction to a culture, I think, because rather than just having a non-fiction book and a lot of facts, you follow the characters,
Yeah.
but you're learning about the culture more than you're really learning about them.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah,
pretty cool.
an interesting read. I think a good kind of introduction if you were interested in, I'd say, maybe some of the problems in South
The
Korea.
negatives of the capitalistic capitalistic South Korean culture.
Yeah, and just how different it is from us, and
Us being white Westerners.
yeah, it was just very interesting. The thing that stuck with me was the plastic surgery side of it, and this idea of that to be able to be successful in certain careers and certain things, you've got to have this plastic surgery,
Yeah, that's
and
weird.
you've got to look a certain way, but not always in careers that you would even expect your image to be
Yeah, I remember
important.
you describing it to me.
And just this very consumer-driven culture was very interesting as well. And yeah, you think of like the Western world as being very consumer-driven. I would say
Yeah.
this felt a lot more consumer-driven, and
Weird.
very especially for female. There's a lot of kind of like, for females, it's like you've got to look a certain way and act a certain way and fit into this mould. It was interesting, and then I went off and learnt some more about some of the things that were interesting from the book.
Inspiration towards cultural learning.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, I'd recommend it if you're interested in South
On my
Korea.
list. My number one is not a surprise to Olivia or anyone who has been... by the end of this, I'm sure I'll have mentioned this book, this being Bookmas, I'll mention this book like 50 times. But my number one, it's Flashman, George MacDonald Fraser. I found this book in a bookstore, as you tend to, but it was a second-hand bookstore in Edinburgh, and I saw the cover, which is just insane. Look at it, stupid. And I was like, this looks dumb. And I had to buy it, and I did. I bought 3 of them. And I read them all before the trip was over. And then I bought the rest of them, and now I have all of them, and now they're like one of my favourite book series. It's sharp, but a coward who's a very lucky coward and a bit of a drunk, and I love it. It's stupid and historical. It scratches that history fiction niche. Oh, it's so good. I love it. I just love him. And it's Tom Brownie.
I was going to say, now you've got to read Tom Brown.
Now I've got to read Tom Brown, because it's taking a character from Tom Hughes' Tom Brown School Days, and then seeing what would have happened to him after he got expelled from rugby. And this happened. He became the hero of England. I love it. It's so good. It's so good.
Sounds fun.
It is. What's your number one?
I have a theme going on.
Oh my god, more
clearly.
South Korea.
Kim Ji-young, born 1982.
Which is a great title.
Yeah,
I think.
because the whole point of the book is that she's not really important. She's a character that you're following throughout her life,
Yeah.
but she is supposed to just be a normal, average South Korean woman
Yeah.
born in 1982. Yeah, and it was just kind of, again,
Yeah.
like to follow on from reading that book earlier in the year to learn a little bit more. And it's broken up into the different sections of her life, and each section had a particular focus. So you learn about her when she was a child and some of the struggles that she came up against in school, and you also then you flash back and you learn a bit about her family and her mum and like the changes through the generations, and then you follow her through university and work, and each section felt very much like it had a different theme, a different topic. It will randomly just stop with the story sometimes and put statistics and facts in, which was kind of cool, because you did then feel like
Yeah.
you were kind of reading a non-fiction book while it's being presented to you through fiction to make it a bit easier to read. So I think this was a good. It was. I'm glad that I read this one.
Yeah, I was
and
going to
then
say,
this
that feels
one.
like that was like the introduction, and then this one's a lot more of a like...
Yeah,
It's such a deep dive into the culture.
yeah, and it was interesting. You were following her, but there were times where it used other characters to make the point and to like, because one person can't experience everything within a culture.
I love the cover. I just love it.
I know. I think it's a really cool cover.
I don't know. It's one of those it's like a piece of art you'd find in a modern museum. Just to think about it, the blank face, the every woman.
Yeah, well, I think
aspect.
that's the point, isn't it? You don't need to know what her face looks like, because she's just your typical.
I mean, the name
person.
is Kim Ji-young. I mean,
Yeah,
it's like
and-
the most that's like John Smith, isn't it?
I think so.
Yeah, Kim is the most common
Yeah.
surname.
It's actually really interesting. I mean, I read the whole thing in one day, and I think it was quite good read like that.
Yeah.
And I just liked the way that the facts and the statistics were weaved in there. It made you feel like with this one, you could have almost felt like you know that it's fiction, but it's meant to be based on truth. But you could have just taken it as fiction.
Yeah.
Whereas with this one, because it has actually got statistics and things. It just
Yeah.
felt a little bit more educational.
There's a very clear difference between our two favourite sections of books, isn't there? Strange books we read. I read a lot of fantasy, sci-fi, sometimes non-fiction. I got quite
I
a
read
few
a lot
history
more
books.
non-fiction than you, I
You
think.
do. I want to read more non-fiction.
Yeah.
I've got a lot saved up.
I think non-fiction sometimes though struggles in that they feel like they've still got to be a 300, 400 page book,
Yeah.
but they make their point quite early on.
They do.
And then they kind of just go over it and over it. Whereas with this, it was quite nice because you are still following her life, and each section was making a different point. So it got rid of that problem that I have with a lot of non-fiction books. It's like, yeah, you could have stopped at 150 pages, couldn't you? But you kept going. But yeah, they pair well together.
And to learn more about our interesting things we've read this year and learn more about us, you should follow along with the rest of this Bookmas series, which is going out every single day from Christmas Day onwards for the 12 days of Christmas, which is weirdly starts on Christmas Day. I don't know.
Wise men seeing a star in the sky, and then they get there on the 12th night, which is
12
why
days.
there's, in some countries, you do the gifts on the 12th night rather than on Christmas Day.
That's weird, but fair enough.
I think.
Well,
don't
we'll
trust
be
me
video
on
every
this.
day, and we'll be talking about various things we like about books. So make sure you subscribe to keep abreast of that, and leave a like and comment down below what your favourite books were over the last 2021, this terrible, terrible year. And thank you
Next
very
year
much.
will be better. Right?
Next year will be better. Thank you very much for watching. See you tomorrow.